Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. A decision recently by Iowa regulators has brought life to the carbon capture and storage industry. Joe Heinrich serves as the executive director of the Smart Carbon Network, and he joins us now for an update. Joe, this decision last week by the Iowa regulators, can you fill us in? What did they decide?
Well, what they first off did was they gave approval for Summit to go into Iowa on the original part of the pipeline that they had. And there are stipulations to it. This is really, when you look at the whole picture of it, this was a good ruling because they have stipulations for safety. They have stipulations for helping the communities with having the equipment and stuff they need. They also are saying, hey, wait until you get the other permits before you start construction. So I think that it was really a good move.
Well, so that's my next question, Joe. Now that this decision is underway, Summit now has approval in Iowa to move that liquefied carbon dioxide up to North Dakota. What are we watching on these other states? What's next for the industry?
Well, with Summit itself, they have to have an approval in South Dakota for transportation. That's the pipeline part. And then in North Dakota, they're actually going to need two approvals. The first one is for the transportation, and the second is for actually storing it up there. So we'll be watching that. For Iowa, the next phase would be these other lines, these other ethanol plants that are going to hook on later that were not included. But right now it's to get those next two states in line. I call it the dominoes. The first dominoes in place, and now we need those next two. It's so important to the community, all the rural communities throughout the Midwest to have this. So.
And Joe, let's jump in on that in a little more detail. Of course, tell us about Smart Carbon Network and why is this something you think would be a great advantage for rural communities?
Yeah, well, Smart Carbon, we're a coalition or an independent coalition. We want to be a go-to source for accurate information for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Obviously, the pipeline, the transportation part is the most emotional part. So we spend a lot of time talking about that, trying to get answers as far as the questions, the myths that are out there. It's going to be very important for rural communities to have this for economic development today, keeping those ethanol plants in place, what it's going to bring to agriculture because of to have that where we can use low carbon ethanol and sustainable aviation fuel is the obvious one right now. We really need to get it through for that. But then it's also that utilization we don't talk enough about. That's going to be other products that are going to actually be able to be made out of carbon instead of putting it in the ground. Imagine having facilities in those areas that are going to produce products that are used that the carbon uses, and it generates more economic development in those communities. That's a great thing.
It is. I mean, that's always nice to see a win for American farmers. Joe, if we've got folks who are confronting this issue, they're watching these decisions come out in real time, where can they go for information? What would you recommend they go to learn more about this issue?
Well, they sure can contact us at www.smartcarbon.com. If they have questions or want to talk more about it, myself or somebody else will get back with them, and we try to be pretty quick on getting answers back. So if there's a concern or questions with it, or if they need somebody to come out and visit about it, we're glad to go and do that. This is such a vital issue to agriculture that we need to make sure people understand it. It's very emotional, so we need to make sure they understand that.
That's so true. Joe Heinrich, Executive Director of the Smart Carbon Network, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFBF tires with AD2 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. Now it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week is Darren Newsom. He serves as the Senior Market Advisor over at Barchart. Darren, thanks for joining us this week.
I appreciate you having me on again, Mike.
There's been a lot of talk over the past 7 days about the epic, the shocking stocks report and acreage report last week. Darren, you probably slept through those two reports. Did they correlate with what you expected to see here in this market?
Yeah, you're right, Mike. I largely slept through them, and I did get a good laugh out of the response from the industry in general. The reality is it did agree with what we already knew about the markets. Number one, if we could look back at the old crop stocks, we knew they were larger than last year just by following the cash market and what that means for available stocks to use. So there was no surprise there. As for acreage, those of us who tracked say the no bean Dees corn spread from last February through the end of, excuse me, from last September through the end of February. We knew that soybeans had bought some acres away from corn. Now, what I found most interesting about the acreage numbers is that NASS came out and said these numbers aren't right. We're going to have to redo them anyway because it was too early. So the bottom line is NASS continues to release reports or numbers that it knows to be wrong, but it does it anyway. So that was my major takeaway from the acreage numbers.
And as is usually the case, the trends in all three of these big commodities, Darren, are still the same. We're still looking, as you mentioned, to ample supplies for growers looking at their corn crop in the field right now, this new crop corn. Are you advising any moves right now?
The most interesting thing about new crop corn is that, if we go back to the spring base price of 466 and we calculate, roughly an 85%, because most folks might have an average of about 85% coverage, that brings a floor price to the floor price of about $4. So that could be, it might be difficult for the December corn contract to take it down below 4. So from a position point of view, even though I don't like the implied volatility, and here it's pretty low, there was the opportunity to possibly sell some puts to protect those hedges that are already in place, those sales that are already in place, to cover that 424.40, excuse me, $424 level.
All right. Darren, while we're thinking feed grains here, I want to get your thought on the wheat market. You're, of course, my Kansas expert. Love talking wheat with you. We've seen that market for the last 2 months just totally dropping off. It seems as though in the last week, maybe we found a bottom. Is that how you're reading the Chicago wheat market as well?
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch how the markets have rallied because everything that I'm hearing, and no one wants to be specific, but the key takeaway from almost every conversation is yields are better than expected. Now, knowing the pessimism of the average wheat farmer, they're anywhere from zeroed out to a horrible yield. So anything better than that would be better than expected. So, but overall, we're not going to run out of wheat. We can see that in the spreads. Basis has been firming, but it's that odd time of year, and we'll see what happens as we get deeper into July.
All right, Darren, so that is something to watch out there. Globally, while we're thinking about wheat still, are you keeping as much eyes on the Black Sea region? Are the concerns there still going to be market movers as we get through the rest of this month?
It's kind of like the folks that got all worked up over these grain stocks and acreage reports. It's interesting to see this hullabaloo risen up, coming up over what's going on over in Russia. The bottom line is we haven't seen an uptick in demand for U.S. wheat. Once we do, then I'll put a little bit of weight to it. But for now, it's interesting. It's kind of fun to sit back and watch the overreaction. But let's see what the market actually tells us.
All right, we'll be watching for more signals from that market, and we'll be back with more from Darren Newsom, Senior Analyst at Barchart, when we return. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFBF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. And we're back, talking markets with Darren Newsom, Senior Market Advisor at Barchart. Darren, we've talked about the feed grains. Now I want to talk oil seeds. We're getting ready to head into August in a month, a crucial month for soybeans. What are you watching in this soybean trade right now?
I think the thing that stands out to me with soybeans, even though we talked about there was more acres this year, and that's fine. We knew that was going to be the case, but as we look down the road and we look at some of the deferred new crop future spreads, they're still sitting in bullish territory. So this tells me there's still some concern about longer term supply and demand. Does that mean I think that we're going to see this huge uptick or upswing in demand? No, I don't. But what I do think it tells me is that there might be a little bit of concern over some weather, as you said, particularly as we get in deeper into July and into August. So, we have to kind of counter that with the idea trade volume's pretty light, open interest is pretty light in some of those deferred soybean contracts. So that certainly puts an asterisk to some of those spreads. But again, it's something we have to keep an eye on, that the market isn't overly bearish, at least not right now.
All right, Darren, on the demand side, we've been watching the concerns in the soy oil markets. Are we seeing any of that start to moderate here midway through summer?
To a certain degree, yes. We still have seen a great deal of pressure on the oilseed complex as a whole. And again, I think really the strength of the oilseed complex has been in bean meal. And so the more that we crush for bean meal, the more pressure it puts on the oil and the soybean oil market, not only from a demand point of view, but just from an oversupply situation.
All right, let's move over to the livestock markets, Darren. We've seen cattle still pushing around dancing around record territory. Does this continue for the remainder of the summer? Can we find that upswing again?
It's going to be interesting because we did much the same thing last year. In fact, if we look at the cash index, it hit an all-time high of 190 at the end of June 2023. And I really thought at the end of last month we were going to be challenging that. We saw it sitting at 189 heading into the last week, and it didn't move. It was even though the June contract that was the futures contract that was expiring did jump to a new all-time high, did not pull the cash index with it. We heard some reports of some 190 traded, but the index itself came in at 189. So, this leaves the market looking a bit top heavy. It'll be interesting to see how the cash market develops in this holiday disrupted week, to see if we see if we do push the cash market higher. Futures market has seen some commercial buying coming in. But again, if this market's starting to get top heavy this time of year, there is a lot of room to the downside if it breaks.
Darren, advice for cattle feeders out there. They're still going out, still writing big checks for these young calves to come into the feedlots. Looking out there in the futures market, are you hedging these animals right now, or would you say let them ride and kind of see what comes?
You can let them ride for the most part because, again, the cash market's relatively strong. And as we look out, there's really no concern with spreads and so on. It's still looking relatively strong. But I would, if we are a little bit nervous about it, and it's rightfully so, the strategy's been for the last year and a half to go ahead and just put some puts underneath to protect these cattle, these prices. So I still like that. Volatility's not all that high, so I still like that strategy.
All right, Darren. And finally, before we let you go, I know you've been looking into the impact of currencies on international trade. There's been a lot of talk about the Brazilian real getting weaker compared to the U.S. dollar. Is it a major driver of foreign trade in your mind?
No, I don't think so. Now, I do think the powers that be are playing games with the strength and or weakness of the various currencies, and that's a topic for another day. But by and large, this is more of a political issue than an economic issue. It's not like if the real were to all of a sudden just skyrocket, it's not going to mean China's going to be knocking at the door for the U.S. soybeans. There's other things that are going to keep that from happening. So, I don't put as much emphasis on currency strength and weakness anymore that a lot of folks continue to do. I think we have to look at this as a political game. And until that gets solved, it's not going to change the supply-demand situation. Or it's not going to change the global market all that much.
Headlines are still going to be moving the commodity markets. Darren Newsom, Senior Advisor at Bar Chart. Thanks for joining us this week.
Again, I really appreciate you having me on, Mike.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, indeed. Greg's got an update for us. And Greg, it sounds like conditions are changing in the Pacific Northwest. Is that right?
Going to get a wee bit toasty out there, literally and figuratively, I guess. If you've been looking for some of the summertime heat, it is the hot ridge kind of fragmenting itself, a retrogression, fancy word for weather kind of backing up from east to west. And yes, it does do that on occasion. So here it is, 95 to 105 degree heat as far north as Washington State, triple digits into the valleys of California to Salt Lake City, probably some low to mid 90s back into the Central Plains, and on the cusp of this jet stream pattern here in the eastern areas of the heat, these ring of fire and storm riding and ridge riding thunderstorms coming out of the Canadian prairie. So plan accordingly. Rapid snowmelt, what's left of it, across the northern and central Rockies and more so in the Cascades. You'll need every drip of water for irrigation operations. The hot ridge kind of suppresses a bit southward. The heat will ease later in the week with an innocuous system inshore and onshore into the Pacific Northwest to Washington State, maybe a stray shower. The thunderstorm activity will add to soil moisture across sections of Montana and the Dakotas. The heat back as far north as the Black Hills with some cooler air. Yeah, kind of a cool spell continuing on across the Canadian prairie. Meanwhile, you look across the southwestern states. Looky here, this is at least the remnant piece of a barrel. This would have been and will have been the earliest arriving and developing Cat 5 hurricane as it comes ashore early in the week into areas of the western Gulf and through Texas. So flooding flooding rainfall here. The heat is here through the valleys of California. Wouldn't be surprised if we set all-time record highs in Death Valley, approaching 130 degrees. The storm clusters on the ridge riding activity, heavy and severe across parts of Kansas as well as Nebraska. Very little change. The heat kind of moseys around a little bit across the southwest. Still a tough one across the valleys of California. Heavy irrigation demand, and this is at least the western flank of what's left from Beryl across parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Flooding rainfall potential across the central and southern high plains, but at least drought relief.
As you look more at the central part of the U.S., Greg, is severe weather going to be a threat with this setup next week?
Probably diminished possibility and prospects for that, except for areas out through Big Sky country with time. The heat across western areas of the Corn Belt need dry time, and it is a drier weather pattern, maybe too late in arriving for the upper Midwest and western reaches of the Corn Belt. Need more rain in these dried out soils of the eastern complex. And again, this northwest to southeast pattern is not real conducive to getting any organized rainfall into the western Corn Belt, nor the eastern sections, probably farther south into the Ohio. Wet weather will be the story. Here is the remnants of Beryl through South Texas. Tropical rains and monsoon moisture in the southwest. Warmth across Kansas, and ultimately a turn to the north and northeast. What's left of Beryl, and that will be deep tropical moisture, which will light up the radars across Oklahoma. Drought relief, but again, this is a saturated area of the western Gulf region, so Mike, probably the potential for additional flooding rain there and parts of New Mexico with those downpour producing thunderstorms.
What do you see for the eastern third of the country, Greg?
A pretty comfortable weather pattern by and large. Cool last week up into the upper Great Lakes region. This boundary stuck into the Ohio Valley. Next weather system upstream maybe generates a shower or thunderstorm, but it is a drier weather picture in the waterlogged areas of the western and northwestern Corn Belt. We think there'll be some entrainment of tropical moisture into the Ohio Valley. This is good news late in the week. Stray shower in the northern Great Lakes region. Very comfortable weather pattern for early to mid-June across much of the Corn Belt. Here is the problem. Beryl coming ashore in through Texas. Flooding rainfall across the Gulf Coast. High humidity with showers and thunderstorms over the southeast. More rain for areas of Florida as well with dryness and drought concerns. And this is a big drought area across the Carolinas. Much needed and welcome rainfall in that particular part of the country. We'll have the 4-week forecast that'll take you into August coming up a little bit later on in the broadcast.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Well, folks, of course, it is July right now, which means we've come to the end of June, National Dairy Month. It was a big month for dairy farmers across the country because dairy is big business here in the United States. Over the past month, we had a lot to celebrate with regard to the dairy industry, and frankly, I didn't realize just how important it was to the economy of the United States of America. In fact, in the dairy industry, or through the dairy industry rather, we pay $67 billion worth of taxes. 3.5% of all of the United States gross domestic product is connected to the dairy industry. 3.3 million jobs here in the United States are tied to dairy, and those jobs pay nearly $42 billion in wages. Folks, the dairy industry is crucial for the health and safety of America, and it's an industry that gives back as well. Throughout Dairy Month, we do see dairy associations working to raise their profile to give back to the communities that give so much to them, and we had the chance to follow the Illinois milk producers' donation to the Northern, the Central, and the Eastern Illinois food banks last month. In fact, Illinois dairy farmers donated 17,424 pounds of milk to those 3 local food banks. That works out to 34,848 combined servings of dairy goods. This was all donated in the name of kicking off June Dairy Month. Several speakers got together in the western suburbs of Chicago to celebrate this donation, including Geneva Mayor Kevin Burns, NIFB President Julie Yurko, Illinois Milk Producers Association board member Mark Tuttle, and Prairie Farms was on hand as well. They got to see a tour of the food bank there in northern Illinois and got to see the impact of these donations. Several folks were on hand, and we really got to see the full extent of the dairy industry's connection to the economy. We've got truckers moving that dairy product. We've got packers getting that all ready to head out to the consumer. And of course, we've got the dairy farmers collecting that milk on the farm and making sure it is safe and ready to get out to those consumers. Folks, we want to raise a glass one more time to June Dairy Month and remind you all that July is here and dairy tastes just as good. Get out there, support those dairy farmers, have a couple scoops of ice cream as we head into this hot part of the year. We've also got some hot sales coming up. Our friends at Steffes Group are proud to announce their latest Grand Island equipment sale. Ben's here with more details.
Hey guys, it's Ben with the Steffes Group. Thanks for the opportunity to highlight the next sale we have coming in Grand Island, a partnership with one of our dealers. We have some very nice late model John Deere equipment, tractors, combines, sprayers, and other miscellaneous harvest machinery. Guys, this is a sale you're not going to want to miss. Steffes has been growing a lot lately and transitioning and growing into the Nebraska market. We found a great home here at Husker Harvest Days at this yard. We hope to have at least 1 to 2 more sales here this year. But guys, check it out at steffesgroup.com. There's lots of tractors, combines, and equipment for you, coming to you from the Steffes Group and one of our local friends here in the Grand Island area. Guys, the list of this machinery is very impressive. We have a lot of late model machinery that's really going to grab some attention, low-houred, ready to go to work. One of the featured pieces is a 2022 S770 Hilco Hillside Combine. Those don't come around at auction every day, so guys, you're going to want to take a look at that. We also have several 22 and 23 8RX and 9RX tractors of all different horsepowers. This is a lot of low-houred late model equipment. Guys, you're not going to want to miss this auction, the Grand Island Late Model Equipment Auction, coming July 10th through the 17th, only at steffesgroup.com. Check out our new website at steffesgroup.com. We have a lot of new upgraded features, ease of use, and also a great watch list you can put on. Our searchability has improved. Guys, this is a new experience that is going to make bidding on late model equipment so much easier for you and anyone else that is needing to buy or sell machinery. So check out our new website. It's coming out the 1st of July, steffesgroup.com. It's going to be a great enhancement to your buying and selling of machinery. As always, guys, if you're looking to buy or sell equipment, check out steffesgroup.com. You can search through your local territory and find a rep in your area, or you can give us a call or find us at steffesgroup.com. Guys, we're growing into all new areas. There's no place we won't go, and there's nobody we won't talk to. So if you've got something you want to sell, check us out. And as always, if you've got something you want to buy, steffesgroup.com is the only place to go. Thanks, guys, and good luck bidding.
Thank you, Ben, for that update. And folks, just a reminder that Grand Island Late Model Equipment Auction for Steffes Group begins online July 10th and closes on July 17th. All of that equipment, as Ben mentioned, is available to view at the Husker Harvest Day site in Grand Island, Nebraska. If you're thinking about making a trip out to Grand Island to take a look at the equipment for the Steffes sale, take a look at the show site for Husker Harvest Days. It's hard to believe that that show will be here in less than 90 days. September 10th, 11th, and 12th in Grand Island. Husker Harvest Days 2024 will be underway. The theme this year is cattle, crops, and community. As a reminder that the Husker Harvest Day show is the largest irrigated farm show in the world, and with its focus there in the high plains, it's also a cattle show. There will be a lot of cattle handling demonstrations, a lot of cattle equipment on display, in addition to the latest in irrigation and, of course, as you'd expect, the latest in farm machinery. You can hop online right now, start planning your visit to Husker Harvest Days. Visit huskerharvestdays.com for more information. Get the map, get the schedule, everything right there for your information. We'll be back after this with more This Week in Agribusiness.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Recently, I had the chance to talk with Todd Van Hoos. He serves as the president and CEO of the Farm Credit Council. He and I were talking about the squeeze that farmers are facing as commodity prices continue to come down and interest rates stay high. And I asked what the Farm Credit Council is doing as this situation accelerates.
I think we're watching it very closely because margins are tighter. And there's no doubt that it's hard to project moving forward that they're going to move a lot in a positive direction. The good news is a lot of producers came into this cycle, if you will, in had pretty good years, put some money away, built some staying capacity. But when you think about what's causing the tightness in these margins, it's largely input prices and interest rates, to be honest. And so we don't see a lot of relief in that. And so we're seeing a lot of farmers really sharpen their pencil about how am I going to structure my operation? What can I do to tighten down a little bit? How do I weather this cycle? The good news is prices are okay. The bad news is input prices are probably higher than anybody wants them to be. I wish I had better outlook than that, but that's what it seems to be, certainly for the foreseeable future. The good news is on the credit front, most of the credit extension part of the world is done for this season, right? All the renewals are pretty much in. People aren't really refinancing farm real estate because interest rates have jumped, and if you've got a cheap loan, you're going to keep it. And so we've got a pretty baked-in proposition for 2024. I guess our concern is more, what are we going to see next year? How are those margins going to erode through the year, if at all? How are farmers going to be ready to operate in 25?
Politically, looking out longer term at things that could impact the American farmer, impact the farm credit borrower, are there any opportunities or things that have you excited out there in the world of agriculture today?
Well, we're excited about a farm bill. We need to get that done. People keep asking, what do you think about the farm bill? My answer is, get it passed. Because there's nothing more important than certainty around what those programs are going to be and how farmers are going to adapt to them. So almost irrespective of the small regional or partisan things that are going to be discussed in this farm bill, the fact of the farm bill is the most important thing. And so we're urging Congress to move forward on that. A couple of things on the horizon. The whole idea around renewable energy, green things, we think that's presenting pretty good opportunity for farmers right now. We came into a lot of this discussion worried that people are going to do mandates to farmers, and that conversation seems to be changing to how can we incentivize? When I hear incentivize, I hear things that I might want to sign up for. And so we think there's some opportunities there. On the other hand, you start to look at the trade outlook and you become a little bit worried. Almost irrespective of political party, we're seeing around the world a rise in trade barriers. Industrial policy seems to be taking the place of let's find a way to free trade. And as a result, agriculture in America is always one of the targets of other countries. And so we are worried about that.
Thank you, Todd, for that update. And Todd's not the only person I've heard grow concerned about the impact on agricultural trade as this presidential election cycle heats up. We'll continue to watch what's coming out of D.C. as November gets closer.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the show, Greg showed some regions that might see some rain next week. Greg, let's get a little more detail. Who's going to see what?
Well, we've got more rain in the forecast and really don't need any more rain. We've got the remnants of Beryl through South Texas, and there'll be heavy downpours expected there, and the wet grounds meet some flooding potential from Texas and with time into the lower Mississippi Valley. But late in the week, this will be very good news for the drought areas of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic region. At least 1 to 3. Wouldn't be surprised there's some double-digit totals early in the week coming ashore across coastal sections. These rain totals a little bit overdone. Isolated amounts mainly through the western Great Lakes region up to an inch, otherwise 1/4 to 1/2 inch. A far more manageable week's worth of weather and a lot of dry time as well for the waterlogged areas of the western and northwestern Corn Belt. Moisture into the northeast and New England. Downpours over the southwest with tropical moisture in the monsoon setup and spotty moisture late in the week, maybe into western Washington state.
As you get into the week of July 15th, Greg, what do temperatures look like?
And we're keeping an eye, of course, on tasseling and pollinating corn and all that kind of stuff. And this is relatively good news. I'm sure there's going to be a wide variance of dates going into that growth mode because of some replanting and late planting or early planting. But anyway, pretty comfortable for mid to late July through the Corn Belt. The heat is still holding on along the divide and along the Gulf Coast areas as well. We keep the weather pattern very active, and flood potential New Mexico, Texas, Gulf Coast. We think there will be another system that comes ashore into the Gulf Coast region and making a run from southwest to northeast with tropical downpours into Florida. But good news for the Ohio Valley, far southeastern Corn Belt, and the mid-Atlantic region. At least it's rain. It may be heavy, but it's coming their way.
By the time we get to July 22nd, Greg, is that heat blob moving?
Yeah, it kind of oscillates back and forth. It reestablishes itself across the middle part of the country. A little lobe of cool air here. Normal temperatures into the Pacific Northwest. It's a busy tropical pattern. Initially Gulf of Mexico, late July into August, getting across the Atlantic Basin, heads up through the Carolinas and Florida. But at least two features down here, and this is really the corridor of significant rain. Dry time back into play. Not good for the eastern Corn Belt, better for the western sections.
Do things start to change a little bit as you get into that first week of August, Greg?
Usually don't get wholesale changes unless you're going to get a tropical system to come on in. We anticipate something riding up the eastern seaboard with time, hence a dip in the jet stream, some cooler air into the northeastern part of the country. The heat eases and retrogrades back across the plains and areas across the western states. Meanwhile, a little more favorable setup for moisture into the northernmost Corn Belt, upper Great Lakes region. Dry time for parts of Iowa, much of the west and southwest. No monsoon setup out here. Look at the tropical systems making their way across Florida, heads up across the southeastern part of the country. It will be a busy tropical season this summertime.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of heavy-duty grain carts and make the most of your harvest season. Visit brandt.ca for more. It's hard to believe, but we are less than 60 days away from Farm Progress Show 2024 in Boone, Iowa. One of the folks responsible for making sure that it is a fantastic show is Dina Morgan. She serves as the sponsorship manager at Farm Progress. And Dina, thanks for joining us this week.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
We've got corn growing in the field there in Boone. Dina, give us an update. How's it looking?
So our operations manager, Rick Wild, has been there this week and sent us updated pictures yesterday. And I tell you, that corn looks fantastic in Boone. Already starting to tassel, so looks really good for being mature in August and having those great field demos.
That will be fantastic. That corn coming off the ground, seeing all the latest equipment in action. Now, Dina, there's going to be a lot more at the Farm Progress Show this year. One thing I'm curious about is we're seeing more roles for women on the farm. They're seeing a lot more activity in agriculture. Will there be any programs geared to that sector of the ag economy?
Yes, we were able to partner with Case IH this year to develop a Women in the Field programming. That will happen twice a day at the Case IH lot at 10 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That will feature social media influencers and other women in agribusiness roles, whether it be marketing, financial planning, things like that. That schedule is coming out. We're just finalizing it now. So certainly check back in the next couple weeks and mark that on your calendar as something that you must attend.
Now, you mentioned that schedule's coming out in the next couple of weeks. Dina, where should we be watching for these sort of updates to the happenings at the Farm Progress Show?
Yeah, absolutely. So always the Farm Progress Show website is a great first place to check. That's just farmprogressshow.com. And then we also really keep updated our Facebook and X pages. And also we have a show app. You can download that now, and that also has up-to-date information.
That is fantastic. In addition to the Women in Focus at Case IH, we're also going to have the Canine Stars back. Dina, is that right?
That's right. So that was a fun new addition last year in Decatur, and we were lucky enough to get them back for Boone. And they are a group of stunt dogs that have all been rescued throughout the country. And they do a variety of different things, whether it be Frisbee tricks, agility, or dock diving. So a really fun thing to go and watch. I think, you know, agriculture and animal lovers kind of go hand in hand, right? So that's a great chance to go watch our canine friends do some special tricks and show off their talents. So that's sponsored by Grinnell Mutual, and it's going to be 3 times a day. So 10:30 in the morning, 12:30 in the afternoon, and then again at 2:30.
Plenty to watch at this year's Farm Progress Show. Get more details at farmprogressshow.com. Dina Morgan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. At the Farm Progress Show each year, it's all of the new equipment very much in focus, but there will be old tractors there too. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants producers are made to make it last. Well, as has been the case for the past 70 years, the Farm Progress Show puts everything new in the spotlight, and you can tell I'm all ready to go for the Farm Progress Show this year, coming up the end of August, August 27th through the 29th. The countdown goes on. It's just a little more than 7 weeks away. And they do have some old tractors there on Antique Tractor Row each year. This was the scene 2 years ago in Boone. They had a variety of colors there, but Minneapolis Moline caught my attention. They had some Minneapolis Moline 5 stars, and there was a Model U, some finely restored Minneapolis Moline tractors. We'll look forward to seeing what's on Antique Tractor Row this year, but we really look forward to everything new in that expansive exhibit field at the Farm Progress Show. And here's something that really makes this show unique: the field demonstrations, where you get to see the new machines moving through the corn each day of the show at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then the tillage equipment will be demonstrated each afternoon at 2. At the Farm Progress Show, it'll be my privilege again this year to describe that equipment as it's moving through the field, as you have the opportunity to watch it firsthand. Farm Progress Show, August 27th through the 29th at Boone, Iowa. This guy will be there, I'm very sure of that. You'll see the folks from Big Iron Auctions, including Mr. Mark Stock.
Well, hello, Max. Big Iron and Sullivan Auctioneers have been very busy listing land and machinery that will sell in the next few weeks. On July 10th, Jerry and Diane Haar from Sumner, Iowa will have their auction featuring 125 items. There's a 2011 John Deere 8235R mechanical front tractor, a 2006 John Deere 8130 mechanical front tractor, a 2023 Kuhn Krause 5635 32-foot flex wing field cultivator. Also on July the 10th is the Darrell Hennebeck Estate Auction by Verdon, Nebraska. They'll be selling a John Deere 4240 tractor, John Deere 4430 tractor with the blade, and a John Deere 4450 mechanical front, plus many more items. And Max, on Monday, July the 15th, Sinclair Tractor with locations all across Iowa will sell quality equipment, including a versatile 610DD quad track tractor, a 2022 Case IH Magnum 400 road track tractor, John Deere X9 1000 combine, numerous Brent gravity wagons. 148 items will sell on this sale. And don't forget the Sullivan Collector Car Auction coming up at the end of July. Now is the time to get your cars listed to sell on this sale. Thanks, Max.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. And we're getting to meet the next state secretary for the Iowa FFA. Chloe Zittergreen joins us this week. Chloe, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here and I can't wait.
Well, let's talk a little bit. You are newly elected to the post of state secretary for the Iowa FFA. Tell me a little bit about your background. Did you grow up in a farm family?
Actually, my parents, neither of them farm, but my grandpa's a row crop farmer. And then my dad actually works for Kinsey as a test engineer here in Williamsburg. So, yeah.
A lot of connections to agriculture then. And Chloe, what was it that made you want to be a part of FFA?
I think I was an 8th grader when I joined FFA, and I had a very, very good ag teacher who kind of pushed me. And he was like, I want you to try this. If you don't like it, then I understand. And it kind of roped me in from there, and more that he pushed me until he retired my freshman year. him pushing me really, really got me into FFA. And even through his retirement, we still keep very close contact. I actually talked to him this morning, and he continues to push me to my full potential.
That is fantastic. Chloe, let's talk about this next year. You'll be serving as state secretary. What are you excited about?
I'm excited to be able to engage with members. So here, the Iowa FFA just a couple weeks ago reached 20,000 in membership, which is a big, big milestone that we've been slowly creeping up on. It's kind of been a ticking time bomb of when is this going to happen? Like sooner than later. We were hoping this year, and here just early weeks of June, we finally hit that. And being able to connect with members is going to be a big part, because I know everyone on my team of 9 has a positive story of when they were around a state officer who made them feel special or had an impact on them.
It's incredible how those impacts move down the years. Chloe Zittergreen, thanks for joining us this week.
Yes, thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Drone technology has advanced a lot over the past 10 years, and sometimes all of those choices can make it more difficult to get started. Well, Chad Colby's here this week with some direction.
I've fielded so many questions lately about what's a great starter drone, Chad. I don't want to do any mapping. Where do I start? And you can see right here on this pivot what a great tool a drone is to go out and do inspections here when we've got pivots running daily. This is the DJI Mini 4. I got this from the guys at Flying Ag, and you can see it's such a compact size. I've got a soda can here for reference. Not only is it small, it's super lightweight, but don't let that fool you. There's so much technology in this system today. I love this little drone. The manufacturers have done a great job in enhancing a lot of the technology that maybe you don't think about much. The biggest being that connectivity between the drone and the controller. Even on this entry-level drone at a price point of about $1,500 with the case and all the batteries, you get those great features. It'll stream back to the controller in 1080p. You can record in 4K. It's got proximity sensors. You can see that on that screen view. That is actually real-time recording. It's got auto takeoff, auto land. This thing is fantastic. But the thing I really want to showcase is look at how stable that image is in the left corner. Even though that drone is hopping around, it was a windy day when I took this, I did it on purpose. I wanted everybody to realize just how great that works. Certainly you can take still images, you can take video. That part is very easy. And speaking of easy, that's what this drone does. It allows you to do some great scouting. Maybe you've got some projects coming up on your farm, whether it's drainage, maybe you're going to put in a new waterway, or you're looking at those low areas. They work great. Or maybe you just want to update from that big case that you have from that drone you bought 5 or 6 years ago. The new Mini 4 Pro is fantastic. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. It's always neat to see how these drone companies are packaging this technology in a way that's better suited for the modern consumer. Thanks for that update. And folks, stay with us. Before we go, we're going to take a look at the Waterways system, which could face a test in the coming weeks. Over the last 8 weeks, record-breaking volumes of rainfall have fallen in the Missouri River Basin. That deluge of water is now making its way south through Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, into the Mississippi River waterway. Of course, the Mississippi River is a vital thoroughfare for American agricultural products, and I recently had the chance to talk with Tracy Z. He serves as the president and CEO of the Waterways Council, a trade association which oversees the inland waterways, about the concerns he's got as this water moves towards those locks and dams.
If I asked you the average age of all 213 locks on the system, what would you say?
I would say 65 years.
You're not bad. It's 80 years old. So the average age, which now when you look at that system and what's wrong, a lot of maintenance has been done. The Corps of Engineers has done a spectacular job at maintaining these facilities, but modernization is needed. You're not going to drive a 80-year-old car anymore. The system, though, is operating efficiently. You're seeing locks come online. You're seeing that the commodities are still getting to market. But the problem is these locks are designed for 50 years. and every year after 50, the risk of failure goes up exponentially. So if we want to keep competing in foreign markets, we're going to need to upgrade and modernize this system rapidly.
Are the droughts on the Mississippi and the impact that has on barge shipping, particularly in the fall and winter? I know the Corps has done a lot of work to keep that channel open down at the mouth of the Mississippi. What more can we do? What would your members like to see done, or how can we grapple with these issues?
You look at this year, I think you're going to have to look to expect another tough, difficult, just off the projections. So what we want at WCI and what the industry wants, right now the river's maintained to 9 feet in channel depth during low water. Most of the time during the year with the natural river conditions, it's much deeper. We would like to see during drought and low water that it's maintained at 12-foot draft. That way you can add the additional tonnage. You're not requiring more barges. And that way, we can continue somewhat of normal operations.
And how long until the Corps would respond to a request like that generally?
Well, it was authorized back in 1954, so we just need to provide them with the money and also the capability of actually maintaining and keeping up the river. And, do you go all the way to 12, do you not? So they seem very receptive to it. Congress is receptive to it. They're undergoing a new study just to make sure there's no complications with that authorization since it was 1954. A couple things have changed since 1954, but they would like to see it as well.
Thank you, Tracy, for that update on the Inland Waterways system. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers has said that their levees along the Missouri River have been holding well in this flood, and we hope that continues. Folks, thanks so much for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be back, same place, right here next time. We'll see you then.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.